IELTS Listening multiple choice questions. People often ask about multiple choice questions in the listening exam because they're difficult. The reasons why multiple choice questions are difficult are there's more to read. You've got 3 or 4 choices maybe, plus the question, so there's a lot of text to read before you hear the recording. Also, several of the choices may be mentioned. You won't just hear the choice that is the correct answer, you may hear more than one, maybe all of the choices. And exact words from the question might not be used. You might hear similar words, synonyms, instead of the exact words from the questions. Techniques. So what can we do? First, use the breaks to read the questions. If you're reading while the recording is playing, you'll find it very difficult. So it's really important to read all of the questions before the recording starts. Use the breaks well. Second, underline keywords in the questions and in the choices. So you read the questions and underline the words that you think will be important to listen for. Those are the keywords. Usually they're the main meaning words in the question. Finally, listen for synonyms or similar keywords. This is very similar to the techniques I've shown in reading lessons where we're looking for keywords in the text. In this case, we're listening for very similar keywords in the recording. So let's look at an example. This is from Cambridge IELTS Book 8, page 61. Just one example question to show you how difficult these multiple choice questions can be, but how we can use the techniques to answer them. So here's the question. Paul decided to get work experience in South America because he wanted to A. to teach English there, B. to improve his Spanish, or C. to learn about Latin American life. So the first step, we've read that during the break time, and we need to underline just the main words to focus on when we're listening. So first, the key words in the question. I've underlined work experience, South America, because. So why is he doing work experience in South America, or why did he? And then in each choice, let's just look at 1 or 2 or 3 most important words in each choice. So in choice A, teach English. In choice B, something about Spanish. And in choice C, something about Latin American life. So now when we listen, we can just focus on those words that we've underlined. Work experience South America because A, teach English, B, Spanish, C, Latin American life. Now let's listen. I'm going to read the part of the interviewer and Paul. So, interviewer. Let's talk about your work experience in South America. What took you there? Was it to gain more fluency in Spanish? Paul. Well, as I'm combining Spanish with Latin American studies, my idea was to find out more about the way people lived there. My spoken Spanish was already pretty good, in fact. Interviewer. So you weren't too worried about language barriers? Paul. No, in fact, I ended up teaching English there, although that wasn't my original choice of work. If we look at what you've just heard, hopefully you've already got the answer, but looking at the transcript I'm going to show you now and comparing the keywords from the recording and the question, let's see if we can get those answers and understand why. So the first thing we heard was the interviewer saying, let's talk about your work experience in South America. What took you there? Was it to gain more fluency in Spanish? So comparing them with the question, we've already seen work experience in South America. So we know that the answer is going to come now. We've heard the key relevant words from the question in the recording already. So expect the answer to come after this. Then we hear, what took you there? That's asking why. Why did he go there? So that relates to the word from the question, because. Then, we've already heard, was it to gain more fluency in Spanish? So now you should be looking at choice B. The interview is asking, did Paul go there to improve his Spanish? So let's see what he says. Paul then says, well, as I'm combining Spanish with Latin American studies, my idea was to find out about the way people lived there. My spoken Spanish was already pretty good, in fact. So what have we heard there? We heard him say, my idea was to find out about the way people lived there. That looks more like answer C, to learn about Latin American life. He also says, my spoken Spanish was already pretty good. So that relates back again to answer B. But he's saying his Spanish was good, so it's suggesting he didn't need to improve it. Then the interviewer says, so you weren't too worried about language barriers? And Paul answers, no, in fact, I ended up teaching English there, although that wasn't my original choice of work. So in that final part, Paul has said, I ended up teaching English there. This seems to relate to answer A, teach English there. However, he says that that wasn't his original choice of work. So it seems that he didn't want to go there to teach English. So what's the best answer? Well, maybe you already got the answer before, but now we can see clearly that the answer is C, to learn about Latin American life, because he says, my idea was to find out about the way people lived there. Notice those difficulties that I spoke about earlier. There was a lot to read, a lot to listen to in the recording, and all three choices were mentioned in some way, and the exact same words weren't always mentioned. So all of those difficulties make it harder to get the correct answer. Let's look at some study tips for multiple choice questions from what we've just seen. First tip, do lots of practice. You really need to practice this kind of question as much as possible to become good at them. Use the transcripts at the back of the book. The transcript is the written script of the recording that you hear. So like I just showed you, the written version of what we listened to, looking at those transcripts at the back of the Cambridge books and comparing them carefully with the questions and the correct answer. That will help you to see the keywords and the vocabulary that gives you the right answer. And final tip, make keyword tables. This is what we do in reading practice as well. We get the key vocabulary from the question and the text, and we put that vocabulary in a table. In this case, we're going to do a table with the keywords in the questions and the similar words in the recording. So for example, what we've just seen in that one question, in the question, improve his Spanish. In the recording, we heard gain more fluency in Spanish. To learn about was mentioned in a question, but Paul said he wanted to find out about. That's the similar words in the recording. Then we saw Latin America in the question, South America mentioned in the recording, and finally our answer, Latin American life, but he said the way people lived there. So there's a quick example of multiple choice questions, why they're difficult, how to practice them, and I hope that helps you.